Hello and welcome to my first ever video ever of all time. This video is about the in operator / keyword in JavaScript. So this in symbol up here, it serves as both an operator and as a keyword. So before going into how it plays a role in both, let's first understand what an operator and a keyword is in regards to programming. So an operator is a symbol that performs specific operations on 1, 2, or 3 operands and returns a result. So without going too deep into it yet, if we look over here at this example of console.log jumps in rabbit. In is our operator. We've got a left operand called jumps, and we're checking if it is in a right operand called rabbit. So before we move on with this, let's take a look at the definition of a keyword. So a keyword in programming is a reserved word by the language, which in this case is JavaScript, and it conveys a special meaning to the interpreter or compiler if you were using Java or some other compiled language, and it's used to perform internal operations. So unlike the way that we did with the operator, the in keyword here, the in keyword is not checking to see if the property, this prop, is inside the object. We already know that it is. And what we're doing is we're iterating through the enumerable properties of an object. So when we look at this for loop here, it's actually best to look at this sequence of symbols and keywords as a singular meaning. So we're not checking to see if the property is in the object. What we're doing is we are going through this object for as many enumerable properties are inside of it. So we're saying let prop, and prop is being set to the first enumerable property of an object, which is prop1. And the reason this is enumerable is because by default, when you declare properties and properties in a object literal like this, the enumerable tag of that property is set to true. The enumerable value of that property is set to true, and we'll get to that in a second. But basically that means that in most cases a property is going to be enumerable. So we're going to console.log prop, and let's say that this is our console down here. We, on this first iteration of the for loop, prop is going to equal prop1. Okay, and then we finish the code because the only thing inside of this for loop was console.log prop, and we go to the next property in the object, which is prop2, and that we log to the console as prop2. We do the same thing for prop3. That's prop3. And then we actually have prop4 in this object. We added it right after we created the object. And here we are using the define property of the built-in constructor function called object. So this is a built-in constructor function right here. This uppercase object is a built-in constructor function And what that means in JavaScript is it's a predefined function provided by JavaScript itself that we can then use to create new objects of a certain type. So we are using it to add another property called prop4 to our object, which is called obj, and it's right here. So we're adding another property with a value called value4, and we're directly setting the enumerable value of this property, of this key value pair, to be false. So this particular property, prop4, is non-enumerable, and the in keyword is only able and only iterates through enumerable properties. So once we get to prop4, which would be right here in our object, right after prop3, once we get to it in our for loop, we don't execute the code inside of it because that property is non-enumerable. And so our console would consist only of prop 1, 2, and 3. So that is the implementation of the in keyword in JavaScript. And now let's go back over to how it's used as an operator. And there's two ways that it is used. So the first use case of in as an operator is to check if a property is in an object. So it's property checking. We're checking if this string called jumps, we're checking if that is a property name in this object called rabbit. So rabbit is right here. It's an object literal. And we're checking to see if this string jumps is in rabbit. Now, jumps in this case is a string. It could also be a property name, could also be a number or a symbol or something else, but in this case, it's a string. So now what we're doing is we're seeing, hey, does this exist in rabbit? And it does. The property name jumps does exist in rabbit. It wouldn't matter. It's currently set to true, but it could be set to false. It could be set to undefined. It really doesn't matter what its value is. The fact that it exists at all as a property name in rabbit makes this return true, makes this console.log return true. Now, what about eats? So eats is eats the property name in rabbit, is eats in rabbit. And it's not directly in rabbit, but the in keyword will work to see if a property is directly in an object or if it's in an object's prototype chain. So what exactly does that mean? Well, every object in JavaScript has something called a prototype, and all a prototype is another object that our object can inherit things from. So usually it's defaulted out to another object, but we've directly set it here to animal using the __ proto _ keyword. And we set that to animal. This up here is that said object. And as we can see, eats exists as a property name in that object. So because it exists, again, this could be set to false or anything really, but because it exists, this second console.log returns true. And let's just say for an example, let's just say that animal didn't have eats, but animal had a prototype, had an object that it inherited things from called entity. So let's say we had __ proto __, and that was equal to living entity or just entity, right? And in the entity, in that object, we had eats equals whatever, eats being the keyword, and then let's say true as the value. Then this console.log would still return true. So if the property exists in the object directly or through the prototype chain, no matter how many times you went up through object to object, this would return true. Now, the second use case, the second thing that in does is if the right operand of in, so in is our operator, and if the right operator of in is an array, if it's an array, then the left operand is going to be an index. So 0 in fruits. Does 0 in fruits exist? Well, fruits has an array of length 3, and since arrays are base index of 0, we've got 0, 1, 2. So this does exist right here. And so we return this in right here, this in operator returns true, and so we just console.log true. And it's the same for both 1 and 2. However, if we said is 3 in fruits, that would return false, and then we would console.log that false, and so this whole line would log false. Now, the way I like to think about this, the way it's easiest for me to remember, is usually we don't look at arrays as key value pairs, right? Objects, we do. It's easy to look at an object and think of it as key value pairs because that's what it is. But usually when we think of arrays, we think of a sequence of elements. However, in this case, when using the in operand on an array, it's helpful to think of the array as key value pairs where the key is the index and the value is the actual value in the element of that index. And so that's an easy way and a helpful way to remember it. And so that's why there's nothing in this. When we look for 3 in fruits, since the index of 3 does not exist, we return false. And that's it. That is the in operator and the in keyword in JavaScript.